We're officially through 2 weeks of NFL action, and the Chargers bolts up. Is this just a small sample size of what to expect, or is this what we should be seeing all season long? Can the Chargers reverse things and go to the promised lands? Find out in the next edition of Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to Sideline Sports Podcast. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another installment of Sideline Sports Podcast. I am the host, Alex Naveja, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. If you guys are liking the content that we're throwing on there, as far as a new segment that we're having on Tik Tok, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you guys want to call it, Facebook, interviews under the lights on Fridays, sometimes Thursdays. Please give all of our social medias a quick follow. We'll put it all in the description down below. If you guys are enjoying the content we're throwing on here on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below what you guys want to see, who you guys want to see on the podcast, and maybe some predictions for the Bolts Up here in LA. And of course, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell while you're at it. But without further ado, you know we have to turn to this man when it comes down to both the Chargers and the Rams. He only works for KTLA Sports. He's a sports writer for KTLA Sports. He's a very familiar face. He was just here last week. It's Will Hernandez himself. Who else are we going to get? This is the pro. This is the top dog when it comes down to the LA football scene. What's going on, my man? Long time no see.
What's going on, Alex? Yeah, definitely excited to be back on a podcast. Thank you for that intro. And yeah, ready to go. Rams exceeded my expectations. So yeah, I got that one wrong. But the Chargers, let's talk some Bolt football. Lots to talk about.
Yeah, you know what? You and I were just talking about before we started jumping on this show about how the Rams have exceeded expectations, defeating Seattle, keeping up with the Niners. But we're not talking about the Horns. We are talking about the Bolts Up right now. And another LA team keeping up with some tough opponents. I mean, Miami, they are now, if you ask me, one of the favorites to win that AFC East division. They were able to keep up with Miami last week against Tennessee. They took that game into overtime, and again, falling short in the last drive of the game in overtime. They couldn't come up with the score. It's overtime. They get the possession. They can't score. I just feel like this is typical Chargers when it comes down to crunch time. They just fall short. What's going on, Will?
It's tough to say, Alex. It's just they're not getting the job done. The big man, Justin Herbert, just got awarded a huge contract extension. He failed to get the job done. But at the end of regulation, they had a chance to score a game-winning go-ahead touchdown with not a lot of time left on the clock. Third down, he gets sacked. And that wasn't his fault. The offensive line, just collapsed. So to kick a field goal, go to OT, and what happens in OT? 3 straight incompletions. The first down, you can argue that he had a Joshua Palmer open, where instead he went for Mike Williams. 3 straight incompletions, and you do that against a hungry team like Tennessee, who had lost 8 in a row up to that game, and against a good coach like Mike Vrabel, who's one of the most well-respected and one of the most coveted coaches in the NFL. You can argue. Everybody, a lot of experts, analysts who cover the NFL, they love Vrabel, and it's tough to say. The Chargers, they have such a great offense. They have a lot of good players on defense that have very respectable careers, and yeah, it's tough to say. Herbert and company, it's their first 0-2 start since 2017. That was the first year under Anthony Lynn, their first year here in LA. And, it's only 0-2, but it's just, considering all the expectations with this team, um, it's not a good look. Uh, a lot of people are already saying Brandon Staley's on a hot seat. Yeah, I'm sure his job's, his job title right now, it's getting warmer. The hot seat is getting warmer. I don't think he's totally, like, I highly doubt the Spanos family will fire him mid-season unless it's just a debacle, but yeah, it's tough to say. He was pretty testy. It's tough. And then you add on to the fact they're missing Austin Eckler, one of the best players in the NFL, one of the best players of fantasy football. The man scored the most touchdowns out of anybody over the last 2 seasons, and he's dealing with sounds like an ankle sprain. So it's tough, and unfortunately, the Chargers' schedule doesn't get any easier.
And that's going to be the tough thing. I mean, you're playing against some tough opponents. I mean, Miami, like we talked about, they're one of the toughest teams in the AFC. Tennessee, they're certainly an underrated team, but they are a team that is a sneaky team. They can either go on a nice little run or they can just absolutely fall apart. But I feel like this has been going on for years, though, with the Chargers. No one can seem to figure out what it is. It's almost like what goes on in Las Vegas, the Raiders, it's like the same thing that's going on for the Chargers, man. Like when it comes down to it, clutch time, crunch time, let's execute. It just doesn't happen. And you and I both know the fourth quarter in the NFL, it's not about, we got to outscore the other team. It's about clock management. If you ask me, it's all about how are you going to run these 15 minutes? Yeah, it's about scoring, but at the same time, you got to know how to handle the clock, and you got to know how to handle like the toughest quarter in any NFL game. This is when it really turns into a chess match between two teams and see, hey, how are we going to use this clock to our advantage? So I don't know what it is, man. I don't know if anybody can figure it out. Like, you almost want to say maybe it's a coaching staff thing. You almost want to say it's just the players just not executing, which is like an easy answer. But then you also think like, coaches, what's the answer? Because Brandon Staley doesn't even feel like he knows the answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's tough to say. Let's go back to their first game against the Dolphins. Chargers they lost both games leading in the fourth quarter. They're the first team to score 50, to go 0-2, despite scoring 50 points, more than 50 points, and having 0 turnovers through the first 2 games. So, this team the offense is moving the ball. Herbert, Williams, Keenan Allen, they're putting up points. But like you said, when it comes down, to getting the job done, to locking up the win, fourth quarters has been their Achilles heel. You go back to the first game against Dolphins, Miami scores late to take a 3-point lead or a 2-point lead. All the Chargers needed to do was kick a field goal, and they were rolling. The Chargers were they were locked in that day in terms of like scoring on offense. And Kellen Moore, the new offense coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, he's done a great job. The offense, they're rolling. But on that last drive, Herbert, he takes a very unnecessary and horrible throwing the ball away penalty.
Grounding.
Yeah, intentional grounding. Thank you, Alex. Intentional groundings brings up second and long. It's just they started moving backwards, and it's hard to say. The Chargers, like you said, the Chargers are charging. They just had this reputation of blowing games late. And you could argue, you were talking about, is it the coach? He was talking about it after the game. A lot of this goes back to that wild card game last year against the Jaguars, where they were up by 28 points, and the Jaguars come back in the second half to win that game, an incredible comeback. That was the start of it. And you can even go back to that Bronco game, at a regular season finale, when Mike Williams gets hurt in a game that really meant nothing to the Chargers. So the Chargers, they with Staley, they kind of apply this, like they're very analytical. They have an analytical approach similar to Dodgers. But you've seen how that works out for the Dodgers in October. You one World Series in what, like 4 years, despite making it 4 years. So analytics isn't everything, and unfortunately in football, it's the Chargers are a very capable team. It's just some of their fundamentals, their Staley's coaching style, or his beliefs, his strategy, it's not working out, and defense has been getting torched. I mean, the defense isn't doing it. This would be one thing if they had a pretty good defense. That's what's been killing them. They're averaging 29 points a game, and the defense is giving up 31 points a game. So that's in the NFL. Like that you can't. It's like the slogan, the stereotype, cliche. Defense wins championships. In the NFL, that's definitely true, and it's especially more frustrating considering that Staley came in as a defensive guru. That was his bread and butter. Defense coordinator with the Rams. They were stout with the Broncos. So it's he's in a tough spot. And Herbert. Again, a lot of this falls on his shoulders too. He's got to get the job done. That's what he's getting paid to do. He's got plenty of weapons out there. The offensive line is doing okay. But the defense is getting torched. They're getting shredded. I mean, you saw it against Miami. They're trying to play man-on-man coverage against Tyreek Hill with no safety help. I mean, he's only the fastest receiver in the NFL. He's arguably, I mean, he's by far the most explosive, but you can argue that he's like the most impactful wide receiver in the NFL. So yeah, it's really tough to say. Herbert's playing well though. He's completing 68% of his 68 completion percentage. He's got 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. But again, he's not getting the job done. And like you said, the Raiders are the Raiders. The Raiders have always been, in my opinion, they've always been cursed because, or they're always going to have they're always going to be somewhat cursed because of their history. Al Davis versus the old commissioner. I think Paul. I forgot. I'll Google it right now. But I mean, I'm sure you've seen the 30 for 30. It was Al Davis versus, Al Davis versus the NFL. And granted, I'm sure he was a great owner, great coach. Raider fans love him. He's the reason Raider Nation is so strong. But, let's face it, the Raiders have always had, the NFL has always had it out for the Raiders. I mean, look at what happened with the Tuck rule. So many games that have gone against them, in the last couple of years. But anyways, yeah, it's hopefully to get out of this. They have the Vikings next, the Chargers, that is. Then you play the Cowboys. You play the Raiders, in 2 weeks. So the schedule's not getting easier, and they're a really tough division. So, the good thing is they're going up against a Vikings defense that's giving up a lot of points. But it's going to be a tough game because it's going to be a, home crowd in Minnesota. The Vikings are obviously hungry. So, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully Austin Eckler comes back.
That's always the big one. Austin Eckler, I always feel like he's a man that's missing in action, and that's a guy that they really need, and he will come up big when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, when he's not carrying the ball. He can maybe he adds as another lineman, as a blocker, or even the way he runs the ball. Like he already has he has one game that he's ran the ball for over 100 yards. So you need Eckler, you need Keenan Allen, you need both those guys in the offense for the Chargers, if you ask me. And another thing, this maybe is a cold take, but with the AFC West being a little down, if you will, with, the Chiefs don't exactly look like the Chiefs. Maybe you can agree with me, or maybe we can agree to disagree with that. Chiefs haven't looked like the Chiefs. Week 1, they lose against the Lions. They barely beat the Jaguars this past weekend. I just don't feel like they're 100% just yet. These are games that I feel like the Chargers need to be taking advantage of. And if you take advantage of that, For all we know, it can be the Chargers at the top of the division if they are able to take advantage of these games. I don't see the Raiders being good this year. The Broncos are still the Broncos. I still can't even tell if they're going to be good or not. It's the first time that we see Sean Payton working with his new quarterback and Wilson. I see this as an opportunity for the Chargers to maybe be at the top of the AFC West, but here they are butchering it. And like we were just talking about it, the next couple games, they don't get easier. You know how hard it is to play in Minnesota. Playing there at Minnesota, it is so tough. It's one of the toughest venues in the NFC. And then you come home and you play against the Raiders. And now let's be real. That's Allegiant Stadium Part 2. Like, Raider fans are going to take over the venue. Then it gets even tougher. And you have to play against the Cowboys. It's elite. It's another home game for the Cowboys. Then you have to go on the road and you have to play against the Chiefs. And it just doesn't get any easier. Like, in that stretch of games, you got to put up your best football and quick, because if the Chargers are for real, if Justin Herbert is for real, a lot of people are saying he is a Hall of Fame quarterback. If he is legit, if he is for real, he has to perform now. He has to execute in the big moments, and he has to show up. Because, like I said, I see this as an opportunity in the AFC West, as long as the Chiefs aren't the Chiefs. And if they keep playing this low-scoring games like they have in the first two games, that's the way I see it, man. This is their chance, if you ask me.
Yeah, those are two winnable games that they really couldn't afford to lose because of what you said. They have a really, really tough schedule. But again, the AFC West is a little down. I mean, it's going to be ultimately them and the Chiefs. They've really struggled against the Chiefs, over the last 10 years. I like what you said about the Chiefs not really being the Chiefs this year. It's going to take some time. Their defense looks really good. But Kelsey just got back, from his knee injury. So, but I mean, they're the Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes. Eventually, they have Andy Reid. And eventually, they're going to find a groove. So, the Chargers. I mean, like you said, it's now or never. That's the NFL. It's going to be tough. This could. I mean, you look at the schedule and you look at like the recent late game, shortcomings. It's going to be hard to see Brand Staley lasting the whole season. But then again, it's being Spanos. I don't see them firing Staley, mid-season, even though they're heading towards a disappointing ending. But yeah, it's really tough, Alex. You had the Vikings on the road. Raider game, it's going to be a home game for the Raiders, like you said. Raider Nation is going to be out and about. Cowboys, that's going to be an interesting game. I mean, the good thing is that these are all going to be very competitive games that the Chargers are going to be able to win. It's just, are they going to be able to get past the shortcomings that have been haunting them, the last four games, you can argue. But they're really going to need Austin Eckler. I think that guy, he's the heart and soul of the team. The defense is struggling. So, let's see what happens there. Considering all the guys they've added, J.C. Jackson 2 years ago, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. You brought in a lot of guys, like Sebastian Joseph Day. You have to still have Derwin James, one of the best safeties in the league, if not the best. But ultimately, I think, missing Austin Eckler, that's a big loss. First in week one, he had 117 rushing yards. 5 catches and a touchdown. I mean, he just does so much for the team, and he's definitely Justin Herbert's safety blanket. And he's a small guy, for, I guess, NFL size, like, in terms of height, but I mean, we've seen the last 4 years, like that guy, he plays big. but yeah, it's but you could sense based off some of the things he was saying that they had been saying to players that there could be a little um I don't know, there could be a little tension in the room, like I feel like when you had Anthony Lynn, he was definitely the adult in the room. Yeah, he had some, he struggles sometimes with clock management and in-game decisions, but you know, we'll see. We'll see, Daniel. I mean, excuse me, Alex. Brandon Staley, I don't know. I mean, I like Brandon Staley obviously from what he did with the Rams. But until he could get the defense turned around, it's going to be hard to see the Chargers, lasting, being in the hunt because they have a really tough schedule, and a lot of teams that are good. But you have a couple of games that they should win, like the Jets, um, the Bears, the Lions. That's a winnable game. And even the Chiefs, if the offense continues to play as well as they've been playing, they're going to be in games. So let's see. I mean, I'm sure we'll, have another podcast and reacting to whatever happens. But yeah, so far, not so good.
He said it, folks. He said it. He'll come back in the future in the podcast. He already said that, so that's going on record. You know what else is going to go on record? This final question. We're going to put Will in the hot seat, and I'm going to ask, what is your projection as far as the Chargers' final record? You see them getting 9 wins this year, maybe 10, or is it 8? Or
I mean, I don't see them going past 8 wins. It's going to be hard considering the start they've gotten off to. It like just yesterday, Brandon Staley said there's no timetable for return for Austin Eckler. That is not a good sign. And I love Josh Kelly, but he wasn't able to. He only had 39 rushing yards last week. It was his job to lose. I mean, he got most of the rushing attempts. So it's tough. They have a really tough schedule. They should be able to beat the Raiders at least once. The Broncos. I mean, the Broncos, even though they struggled and Russ is getting, he's becoming a social media punchline. Like they're still the Broncos. They're competitive. They have a very passionate fan base, and playing in Mile High is never easy. So we'll see. I mean, Sean Payton's a good coach. It's just he's brought a lot of drama onto himself. It's tough. They still have to face the Bills, the Patriots in New England. I mean, Bill Belichick, he's still a good coach. He's still, the Patriots, they play hard, they play fast, and the Chargers do too. It's just, they just have those, they got to get over their fourth quarter blues. It's tough to say until I see them do that. I cannot see them winning more than 8 games. It's, and I think, I we'll see. But again, it's still early, so maybe they can right the ship. They have a really tough schedule, and the defense is not showing any signs of but again, it's very early, so let's stay hopeful.
Very quickly, Will, wild card or no wild card, division or no division?
No division. Yeah, no division. They have more wild card spots, so maybe they sneak in, maybe, but again, it's gonna be what happens with they're going to be in a lot of close games. So I'm going to say no wild card either. It's just, it's too much uncertainty right now.
I'm going to go with a limb, and I'm going to say wild card this year. They're going with a wild card, and I could see it. And Justin Herbert, I trust, and I feel like he will take them to the promised land of at least making it to the playoffs. I said earlier that they have an opportunity to take the AFC West. Will they do it? Well, that's why you guys got to chime into Sideline Sports Podcast so we can keep you guys up to date with what's going on and have Will come back and break it down for you guys here. I mean, I only have his jersey right here. It's just blocked, but Hernandez right there, right there for Will Hernandez coming on the show. But that's all the time we have left here on Sideline Sports Podcast. We thank y'all so much for joining us for this one. If you guys like this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below. What do you guys think the final record of the Chargers will be? Do you think they're going to be an AFC West division winner? Do you see them going to the wild card? Or do you think I'm out of my mind for thinking that they can win in the wild card and you're side with Will and think Will has got it? And we want to hear you guys' predictions. And also, of course, hit the subscription button down below with the notification bell so you guys can stay up to date as far as when we upload on the podcast. Don't forget to stay tuned with the next episode, next segment of interviews under the lights every Friday night after every Friday Night Lights football game. And of course, on my left-hand side, he has always been there for Sideline Sports Podcast as far as for Rams, Chargers coverage, and you guys can catch him in KTLA Sports Department as a sports writer. It's Will Hernandez himself, folks. I'm going to put his Twitter and his IG down below so you guys can see the beautiful golf swing that the guy's got. You guys can take some notes if you guys want to make an appointment with him to play some golf and have him give you some of those the Tiger Woods swing or show you the ropes, guys. But Will Hernandez, always here on the show. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Alex. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely, man. I am Alex Naveja from Sideline Sports Podcast saying thank you so much for tuning into this one. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. Have a good night, everybody. Hasta luego, and enjoy the NFL season.